All right, it's time to catch up with Mike LaTulip. And Mike, we got a lot to catch up about. A lot has happened with Illinois basketball during the last couple of weeks, but Happy New Year, Mike. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm on the mend. I think I had flu-like symptoms, but we're powering through here.
Had your Jordan game with the Fairleigh Dickinson game. Just how was that? I haven't had a chance to go back and watch it yet, Mike, but I've heard only great positive things about Michael LaTulip, BTN analyst.
Well, luckily I didn't have the flu for that game, but it was a blast, man. I mean, it was a kind of a dream come true. When I was at Illinois, when you're at shoot around, you see the color commentators coming in and you see them before the game all dressed up, which does not ever feel natural for me. But it was awesome. It was kind of everything I thought it would be and more. And you start to realize when you're working with a network like the Big Ten Network, they really put you in a position to be successful. I mean, Mike Hall, who I called the game with, was amazing. You got producers in your ears who are just top notch and put you in the right spots and kind of let you know what's coming down the pipeline. And so it makes for a smooth broadcast. And all I cared about on that broadcast was for people that didn't know it was my first BTN game, for them to not know it was my first BTN game. That was the goal. Was if it didn't sound like a debut, then it was a success.
Yeah. Do you have like a couple guys you look up to, like during your basketball upbringing of analysts that you really like take notes from or really enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you realize is everyone is so different, and the preparation process for me, I watch games differently now because one, you're watching just hey schematically this and that, but I watch and you can't not listen and really dial into what the color commentators are saying. Like it's just kind of ingrained in you now after doing this and really before doing this. But yeah, I mean, Robbie Hummel is someone that I've been able to get closer with, and I've really confided in him in different for different things. And um, but even he has like a different style, and LaFonso Ellis has a different style, and you go on down the line, Sean Morris and Jess Settles. I mean, everyone is different in their own right. Bardo as well. So you kind of have to, yes, draw on some things from different color commentators, but you also have to kind of be yourself and bring your own unique element to it. So that's what I'm trying to do, right? There haven't been a ton of opportunities, but with those opportunities, if I continue to get them, you hope to continue to grow.
I think you'll continue to get them, and we can't wait for it. But you were throwing a curveball, Mike, as we all were right before the Fairleigh Dickinson game. Is we learned that Terrence Shannon is suspended indefinitely, charged with rape in Kansas. You've been a part of teams, Mike, that have had some off the court issues and losing players due to off court issues. So I'm wondering from a player perspective what that has been like for them. I mean, it's obviously all different charges, all different things, but how can it impact a team when an important player or any player is taken away from you due to off court reasons?
Yeah, this one was a little bit unique, just in the sense of the timing
Mm-hmm.
of it. I had a couple teammates that were a couple days after the season. I had a teammate that was in like late February when we were winding down and we weren't going to be in a postseason. I had another teammate that was on an overseas trip.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a lot, right? And it's a lot to unpack emotionally. These situations and scenarios can be very layered, and sometimes you feel like as a teammate you have information, sometimes you feel like you don't have information, but the reality is at the end of the day, as a team, the season is going to move on with or without you collectively. So the focus has to shift to where after that initial shock kind of wears off, it's like we got to play basketball and we have to continue to do our jobs. And then now that for a guy like Terrence, missing a guy like Terrence, we can't compound what is already a big loss with more losses on the court because we're not focused on what we have to do. And I think that's what's been really impressive about this Illinois team these past 2 games.
I was going to say, what stood out to you? Because this has been jarringly great basketball without an All-American. Fairleigh Dickinson, you take care of you had 40-point lead at one point. Northwestern, you just blow off the court and scored 96 points against a defense that was really good last year, really limit their offense. What has impressed you about this team's success the last 2 games without Terrence Shannon?
I mean, it's a really talented team. It was when Terrence Shannon was playing. And I don't think that they're doing anything incredibly different. They're just super consistent with the things they were already good at. And that's guarding at a high level, that's playing with that connectivity offensively, that's exploiting matchups offensively, and then playing with toughness and winning those 50-50 battles. And I think all that was on display these last 2 games. And it's a big reason why they really won convincingly in both. Now there's different elements to the way those 2 teams played you that I think really lends itself to how this Illinois team wants to play. But you took care of business, and that's a Big Ten opponent in Northwestern that you've played some close games with over the years. I mean, that was, go back a year almost to the day, it felt like things were really spiraling up in Evanston after that game. Then fast forward, and this looks like a completely different program and team and the way guys play together and play for each other. So they already had that in place, that connectivity, playing for each other. Like that team last year, if they lost Terrence Shannon, man, yeah. I mean, that would have gotten bad. It would have gotten bad quick. But this team was a little bit more suited because they're older, more experienced, can kind of take on that challenge, and like I said, they've certainly answered the bell.
Connected is the key word Brett Underwood keeps using. Yeah. Mike, to you, what does that mean? How do you see it? How do you know it? What is connected?
I mean, some of it's intangible. Some of it is, you know it when you see it. It pops off the screen. There's no hesitation. A lot of times we see it offensively, where you're sharing the ball, guys are moving it, and I don't see any type of reluctancy offensively on this team. And sometimes that comes from, hey, I'm going to give up the ball to this guy on this one more, or I'm going to keep feeding him because he's the hot hand, because I know if I was in that situation, they would do the same for me. And then that's how that continues to snowball in a positive way. And then defensively, you can, there isn't selfishness defensively where you're so tuned into your assignment. Like, I can't mess up my assignment. I don't care what goes on around me. Guys are willing to offer help. Guys are willing to make certain plays on the ball, I think, because they know that they have these, guys that are able to help recover behind them. So all that stuff factors in as well. And when it kind of boils together, you get a performance like you got the other night. And then that is, Chris Collins was in that post-game press conference like, what do you want us to do? Now, we'll do the film later. I mean, Northwestern, that's a really good post-trapping team, and they're good zoning up out of this post-trap. That was as bad as I've seen them post-trap and just miscues defensively, but you got to credit Illinois because the connectivity, the quick decisions they make out of those traps, out of those post-traps, and then defensively, that it's what puts you in a bind.
One thing I always think of, Mike, is there's a team that's older, right? Probably better suited to deal with this aspect of it, but the spotlight of your program, the outside attention, whether it's media or fans and all the speculation that's out there, like, how do they handle that? And what do you think this last week meant for them internally to show this on the court? Like, they showed something to themselves too, right? Without Terrence.
Yeah. And I think sometimes teams can be, the good teams can be kind of insulated from that. Social media is a weird place. Sure. Especially weird over the last week or so. And the really good teams are able to kind of shut that out and realize that, the opinions that matter within that locker room. And I say opinions of what that team can be,
Yeah.
opinions of, oh man, the season's cooked. Right. And being able to stay focused on, hey, our jobs don't change from game to game. You still have your role, you still have your responsibilities. Now, those may be heightened in certain ways. You may have more opportunity, like a Justin Harmon, but at the end of the day, like, you still have to do what is required. And yeah, I mean, the other thing too is it's break, right? Is it still break?
Yeah.
So these guys aren't going to classes,
Right.
and so all that factors in. But again, the really good teams are able to keep that insulated and focus on the task at hand. They've done a good job of that.
Get started on your resolutions with Factor so you're ready for the new year. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores, prep work, and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, my favorite protein plus, and more. Plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your resolutions. So forget the frenetic lunch preps and rush dinners. Factor's 2-minute meals are your secret weapon in the new year. Fuel up fast with restaurant quality meals, all delivered straight to your door. So stress less over meal times in the new year. Factor's no prep, no mess meals free up time otherwise spent shopping, cooking, and cleaning up. No more wasted time in the kitchen. Head to factormeals.com/Illini50 and use code Illini50 to get 50% off. That's code Illini50 at factormeals.com/Illini50 to get 50% off. All right, so we got to talk about booty ball. It's kind of a matchup-based offense is what it is, but why is it so effective right now, Mike? And do you expect any adjustments opponents will make moving forward?
It's been a bit of a revelation because they weren't doing this in the beginning of the year. And you can't do this if you don't have the proper personnel. And when I say personnel, it's not just, I think we think of personnel in the sense of, hey, guys that can back down. I mean, we thought about booty ball in the sense of Jalen Pickett, but they can't do booty ball if they don't have the guys around Jalen Pickett.
Right.
If they don't have Andrew Funk, if they don't have Miles Dredd, if they don't have Seth Lundy, what those guys are floor spacers, they're shooters. Seth Lundy's was probably one of the better cutters and like dive cut guys out of post traps and off skip passes. So you need to have that personnel. Like I said, there's a lot of attention that's on Domask and on Rodgers and on Guerrier. You can't do this if you don't have Coleman Hawkins.
No.
You just can't. Because one, he spaces the floor because of his ability, especially as of late, to shoot the ball. But those traps, if they want to send two, cause rotation. And out of those rotations, maybe he catches it and he can drive a long closeout on a more slow-footed 5. Or if they want to be in rotation, and now you get into this kind of pinball one more scenario, he's 6'10", he can see over the defense, he can skip passes. He can make skip passes across the floor to guys like Justin Harmon and Quincy Guerrier. And so all those pieces have to work together or else everyone would do it. Mm-hmm. They take, they say, hey, who's our kind of biggest guy who can back guys down? Let's play booty ball. If you don't have the guys around, it doesn't matter. And also why Domask is so potent with it is because he can make reads out of it. He can make passes out of it. And then if you want to go single coverage, he can back you down into the paint. And if you foul him, he's almost 90% from the line. And again, that's just like teams when you go down the list, even in the Big Ten, your eyes got to be kind of lighting up a little bit if you're Illinois, because you go and look, and I wrote it down here: Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer, Tyson Walker, Jameer Young, Doug McDaniel, Derek Simpson, Boo Buie, and the list goes on. I mean, Tomi Naga and Sam Hoiberg. Mm-hmm. So what are you going to do? I mean, the two options you have when they go into booty ball, and they did it in different parts of the court against Northwestern. They really tried to do it in the middle of the floor because that's it makes it harder to trap from the middle of the floor. But you either go single coverage and run the risk of a Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, Tyson Walker, Jameer Young, Doug McDaniel getting in foul trouble, which you don't want, or you send a post trap. And if you send a post trap, now you got to hope that this Illinois team misses shots, doesn't attack those long closeouts and puts you in a bind. It's really hard to guard, man. It's really hard to guard.
I'm glad you mentioned Hawkins because he's the key to everything they do, both offensively and defensively. And I know we keep having why doesn't Dane play more? It's Coleman Hawkins. He is so dang good. But Quincy Guerrier is a part of this as well. And one thing I'm noticing more and more, Mike, is Quincy's obviously on an offensive hot streak, the best offensive streak of his career, averaging 19 points a game over the last 5. But also defensively, he just cleans up the glass. Him and Ty Rodgers allow Coleman Hawkins to do what he does defensively and compliment him in the glass. But how much is Guerrier complimenting Coleman Hawkins, and how difficult is that front court for the rest of the Big Ten, given the versatility of those guys?
Well, you talk about the hot streak that Quincy's on, and a lot of times you go back to, the Purdue teams a couple of years ago, even in, recently as well. When you have post traps and you have guys that are getting quality looks out of those post traps constantly, you get those higher quality looks that lead to higher percentages. And that's this change to booty ball and the change that's been made over the last, I don't know, maybe like 7 games, 6-7 games has really coincided with Quincy emerging.
Yep.
Because he can make those post-entry passes. And at Tennessee, if you want to help from the ball side and trap Coleman Hawkins, it's an inside out, which is the best 3 in basketball. 3 for a guy who has been in the mid to, low to mid 30s in his career and is now kind of creeping into that territory as well because of the quality of looks. But you talk about the front court itself. I think you've made the comment before, but I mean, think about Quincy Guerrier on those 2021, 2022 teams. I mean, good Lord. And that tandem of Quincy and Coleman, they're both versatile on both ends. I think Quincy, we talk about Ty Rodgers and Terrence Shannon's defense and Coleman Hawkins. Quincy's been fantastic on that end this year. And they, when Dane's in the game, they'll switch 1 through 4, but they can switch 1 through 4 because of Quincy and because he can stay in front and he moves his feet and he knows angles. And I think this front court's a bit underrated.
I do.
When it comes to the Big Ten. I mean, who are the ones that you really, really look at, right? Is it Crowell and Wall and I guess Edey, if you want to slide the scale, Edey and whoever else, but Renew and Ware, I think are up there as well. But each one of those groupings have certain deficiencies, whether it's defensively or certain things offensively. They can't space the floor like a Coleman Hawkins and a Quincy Guerrier. So when you talk about like the complete package on both ends, they're right up there with some of the best front courts in the league.
What impresses you most right now about Marcus Domask's skill set? Because the shot can come and go from game to game. We've seen that. But, I mean, his ability to create offense, he's got 24 assists in the last 3 games, Mike. And part of that's going to this booty ball. And we've seen the mid-range just be so deadly. So when that 3-pointer gets going, it's dangerous. But what impresses you most about what he does?
Well, it's unlocked a lot of the skill set that he has. Because I think coming into the season, you're like, hey, he can make reads and he's a good passer. Is he a catch and shoot guy? And if he was solely limited to being a catch and shoot guy, that hasn't been a strength this year for him. And this other element of his game and what they've gone to, one of his best skills is the pace that he plays with. I mean, he's not sped up. He gets you on his hip. He goes where he wants to go, when he wants to go there. And, I think the array of moves that he has, even when he gets to those back downs, the, kind of the up and unders, the pivots, the kind of leaners, the fadeaways that he had, we saw that early, and it's just kind of evolved for him. And now you have, because he's in these booty ball situations, they're getting to the bonus quicker. He's getting fouled more. He's, whatever he is, 95% in the month of December.
Can I throw this at you, Mike?
Yeah.
32% of his shots are coming on 2-point jumpers. and he's making 64% of them. The next highest on the team of like guys who are regulars, it's Rodgers and Guerrier at 43%. So it tells you how effective he is. And now a 90% free throw shooter as well.
No, it's insane. And it is about, as efficient as you can be offensively. And now if the 3-point jumper comes along as well, look out. But yeah, no, you're totally right. I mean, look from November to December. November, he was averaging 4 2-point attempts a game. December, he's averaging 8, 9. And for a guy that doesn't have it going offensively from 3, he's getting it in a different way. And he's just as effective without a 3-point shot right now. I think teams are still kind of wary of it because he's proved over his career that he can do it. But man, we'll see how teams start to guard the booty ball stuff with Domask, because like I said, you have one of two options. You either go single coverage and they put you in a bind. Maybe they start trapping some of those pistol 21 actions that they're running where it's just simply, hey, 2-man who's in the corner, come up and set a reverse ball screen, get the switch and go on Martinelli, on Barry, on Bowie. Do they start trapping that? Do they start just trying to fight over and keep matchups? It'll be fascinating to see how they handle that. But what I do trust is the fact that no matter how they handle that, Marcus makes the right play, and he can make the read out of it. He can pass out of it. He can go to work in isolation. On pregame radio before that game, Scott Beatty asked me, he said, hey, who's the guy late game? It was Io and it was Terrence, and who's the guy that can go and make a play? I think it's Marcus Domask. Yeah. I mean, I think he's so good in isolation and with certain matchups that's something you can go to late game, and that's another add that to the arsenal for this Illini offense.
We knew with Terrence Shannon out, everybody had to elevate their game. We know Guerrier, Hawkins, and Domask have done that, but the two guys that clearly we're going to have to elevate it were Ty Rodgers and Justin Harmon. Harmon was a Division I leading scorer last year. He's starting to show it, Mike. What's impressed you most, or what excites you most about Justin Harmon's last 2 games of 38 points here?
I mean, if you ask why he's emerged, it's opportunity.
Yeah.
He's had a history as a scorer, and the role that he's in right now accentuates his skill set. He's a good catch and shoot guy. He's a good slasher. And when you play these back down booty ball rotation trap scenarios, that leads to more catch and shoot opportunities and more slashing and straight line drives out of those rotations. That is Justin Harmon's game. Mm-hmm. And so that has certainly helped. And I've just really been impressed with the way that he's taken ownership of the defensive end as well. And that is big, because if you can tell with Brad Underwood, he don't want to put anyone out there that can't guard. I don't really think he cares who you are. So you have to be able to accept that challenge, and there's no question that Justin's done that.
Last 3 games for Ty Rodgers, 6.7 points, 9 rebounds, 3.3 assists, shooting 44%, shooting 86% from the free throw line, by the way. Small sample size, but he's been a better free throw shooter. Is he doing things here, Mike?
Have you noticed that he's become more aggressive since he started making free throws?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he is much more of a confrontational driver. He's not avoiding contact like I thought he was earlier in the years. There's less kind of get around of like, I don't want to go to the free throw line. Now he's like, shit, I'm making free throws. I'm going through your chest. I mean, there was he got fouled in the Northwestern game. And he looked like he had nowhere to go in that first half. And he was kind of dribbling into 2 guys, but he just continued to muscle his way through them. And eventually a foul was called. Man, when you feel like you can make free throws and go and get some easy ones from the free throw line, that changes everything. And I thought he was already an aggressive player, but aggressive in certain spots. Now he's aggressive all around on drives, getting to the basket. And I think he does probably as good a job as anybody on this team of just high pointing rebounds and going and snatching offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds. And it jumps off the screen. He's been, just like we talked about Coleman Hawkins, how you can't do what you do if you don't have, what they do if they don't have Coleman Hawkins. They can't do what they do if they don't have Ty Rodgers. Because if you traded Ty Rodgers for a guy that was more like me offensively,
Mm-hmm.
It makes you more stagnant. You probably don't have as much connectivity. He goes into every game, and the value that he has is his consistency. It's the same guy every single game. You know exactly what to expect. And that's a coach's dream, because there's no laying in bed like, man, what Ty Rodgers are we going to get tomorrow night? Same guy every game. That's huge.
He's 9 of his last 11 from the free throw line. And if you go back even further, he's 13 of his last 17. So that you'll take that for an entire season from Ty Rodgers.
That's damn good for a 38% free throw shooter last year.
All right, Mike, didn't know if we'd still be excited about this game a week ago when the news broke, but top 10 matchup between number 1 Purdue, number 9 Illinois, the Illini heading to Mackey Arena. They've never beaten a number 1 on the road, but I just find this matchup, this basketball matchup, fascinating because it's contrasting styles. What do you think of this matchup?
Well, the first thing you can't do is use the transitive property and say, all right, well, beat Northwestern by 30. Northwestern beat Purdue. It's not how basketball works.
That's not happening in Mackey.
Yeah, and it's not, and that game wasn't in Mackey Arena. But look, there's so much focus on Zach Edey, as there should be. I mean, he's at the point where you look at some of the most recent mock drafts, he's in the lottery in some of these. I mean, it's a down draft, but I think he's earned that. I think he's unique. He's not just tall. There are a lot of matchup issues that he creates. There's no question, but it's these other guards too. And this Purdue team is at their absolute best when Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer are at their best. You go back to even the Maui Invitational, and Braden Smith, 18-5 in that championship game against Marquette. They played against Tennessee the game before, and Fletcher Lawyer had 27 points and shot 11 free throws. And part of that is the way that Edey's guarded. So, what's your coverage against him? Do you just say, hey, we're going to trap like every other team does? Now, is that trap on the catch? Is it on the dribble? Because if you are going to trap, that's going to leave these guys open. That's going to leave Braden Smith free. That's going to leave Fletcher Lawyer free for not only jump shots, but for those. I think Fletcher Lawyer is a really good straight line driver, and he can finish in weird ways and unorthodox ways. So you have to be able to limit those two guys. And I think that's not only from the standpoint of, hey, how do we guard Edey and what does that do for Lawyer and Smith? You got to go at Lawyer and Smith defensively, or when you're on offense. And that is booty ball. That is hunting those matchups and trying to make them work on that end. Maybe you get Braden Smith into foul trouble. Maybe you get Fletcher Lawyer into foul trouble. Now, Lance Jones is a guy that they've added this year that I think is an upgrade from a Brandon Newman. I think he's a really good defender. He can do things offensively as well. So there's not as much drop off when it goes to the Purdue bench because they have older guys with Ethan Morton and Lance Jones. But Smith and Lawyer also stir that drink. There's no question. So how you guard them, how you guard Edey, it's all going to be a factor. But you better believe that Matt Painter, who's one of the best tacticians in college basketball, he's going to have something. He's going to have something for this Illinois team, and we'll see how they adjust.
Yeah, I would imagine there's probably 3 contenders for Big Ten Coach of the Year, and it's far too early. Painter, Underwood, Greg Gard, I think are going to be the 3 that are going to be in that mix. But outside of just making shots, you have to make shots at a high level to escape. What is the blueprint to a win? Is it letting Edey cook and just stopping everybody else? Like, if you're Brad Underwood, what is your blueprint? What is your game plan?
Yeah, it's what's fascinating about Purdue. They haven't been out rebounded this year, not one time. Xavier was the one team that tied them on the glass, and they won that game convincingly anyways. And then you have a game like Northwestern where Northwestern gets out rebounded by 25. And but Purdue turns the ball over 17 times and Northwestern turns it over 3 times. and then Northwestern makes 5 more threes. So they got that back in different ways. You cannot go into Mackey and turn the ball over like you did last year to start that game and spot them 8 points, get down 8-0, get down 21-6. That's a death wish. You can't do it. So what's your effort like on the glass? This is Illinois' best rebounding team in the country. On by sheer numbers, defensive rebounds, they're the best offensive rebounding team in the Big Ten when it comes to straight numbers. So what's your effort like on the glass? Can you steal some there? Can you take care of the ball in just a ruckus environment? It's one of the best environments in college basketball. And then you see where the chips fall from there. Because again, in wins last year, Zach Edey was, I think, 23-12. In losses last year, Zach Edey was 23-12.
Right.
So he's going to do what he does. How do you limit him, and how do you limit the guys around him? That's really what this comes down to. And then what type of effort do you come and play with? The last point that I'll make is I'm glad that this is the game after Northwestern, because you have a 30-point win. Everyone's saying, "Oh, Final Four's back on, Big Ten championship back on." And how do you handle that as a team? Because if this was, hey, we're going to one of the more middling opponents. We're going to Nebraska now. This next game, we're going to Michigan, right? I'd probably be even more worried, because that screams letdown. You have all the motivation in the world to come into this game, try to get the first number one, win against a number one on the road in program history, beat a team like Purdue, who you're 2-0 right now in the conference. They already have a loss. And all these wins right here matter if you want to go and take home a Big Ten crown. This is it. I know it's early January, but these ones matter just as, January 5th, March 5th, doesn't matter. They're all the same.
Yeah. The one thing about this team, Mike, and we keep making, and it's a real point. Last year, you never knew what you're going to get out of that team, the inconsistency of it. This team, I watched the rest of the Big Ten, and I'm like, Illinois and Purdue, and I think Wisconsin is this way too. They're just trustworthy. Like I trust this team that they're going to show up, that they might not make shots and they might lose a game, but after seeing Missouri and after seeing, of course, the last 2 games, this team is so focused and they're confident. Like they are doing the right things. And I think the consistency of it is why Brad Underwood loves this team. But why I'm confident they'll go into Purdue and they might lose because they might not make shots, or they'll turn it over or whatever, and may not execute. But I feel like they're going to bring it every game.
Yeah, we talked about this after the Kansas scrimmage, and even after Marquette. There were I saw people talking about like, oh, it's just the same team as last year. I said, how does this team make you feel?
Yeah.
Because there's a feeling as a viewer and when you're watching that is different than last year. Last year was like, oh my God, they made the step back 3.
That's right. Yeah.
Geez, all right. Now oh God, they just got down 15. Oh shoot, then now they're pressing. They're back into it. You to your point, didn't know what to expect. This year, you talked about Illinois, Purdue, and Wisconsin. What do those 3 teams have in common? Trustworthy for sure, older.
Yep.
And honestly, I'll add another part to that. Their personnel makes sense. I look around the Big Ten and Indiana. there's elements of Michigan. Yeah. It doesn't make sense. Some of those pieces just don't make sense. And these 3 teams at the top of the Big Ten have done a great job of not only going out, getting the right personnel for what you want to do, but those roles have been identified, and they've been identified early. There's some Big Ten teams that I think are going to come along as the season goes on. Like I think Michigan State's going to find a way to turn things around. They're already kind of doing that with the absence of Joey Hauser. But yeah, no, you're right. This is a trustworthy group, and trustworthy in the sense of not only on the court during the game, but game to game. Yep. How do they handle, moving on and playing this next opponent after a big win? I've said it before. That's what made that the Trent Frazier, Ayo Dosunmu era so strong and consistent, is because they were on those guys. I mean, you could hear it coming out of the locker rooms. Just hey, we don't care. We don't care who you are. Bottom of the Big Ten, top of the Big Ten, we're coming for you. And it's not a game by game. Hey, let's just pull these different levers. Hey, we'll give a little bit of this just because it's Penn State or it's Nebraska or it is who is next on our schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a big deal because it means you have mature leaders in your locker room.
And they seem pretty locked into the scouting report. I think that definitely shines through compared to last year at times. Before I let you go, Mike, I want to ask you, as a guy who's been at all these venues, where's Mackey rank among the Big Ten for you?
1.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, in terms of
15 years ago, I never thought anyone could beat Assembly Hall in Indiana because of the 2 walls of people, the acoustics there. They're crazy about basketball. Purdue over the last decade, but especially the last 5 years, is just taking the cake.
Yeah, I mean, and I say 1 from the standpoint of how loud it gets, for sure. It's unique because there's like the almost concrete / like brick walls on the sides and like over by your bench. So I think noise kind of gets trapped down there. Indiana is up there as well. I mean, I was sitting right there when Indiana made 19 threes on us, beat us by 30 in 2016 on their way to a Big Ten regular season title. And I think every arena in a sense. I mean, Iowa gets loud too. That's like one bowl. There's not like a deviation in sections. It is just like you walk in and it is straight down. It's just a pit.
Mm-hmm.
And that place gets loud as well. Michigan State, I think for people that haven't been there, the one thing that struck me when I went there my freshman year, it's smaller than you think.
Yeah.
And part of that is like the camera angle during the game. The ones that are higher up make it seem like it's a really large arena. And I got there, I was like, gee, I mean, Baylor just unveiled this new arena. That camera angle looks like they're on Mars, but when you see the actual inside of the arena, it's a really small arena. So, but the State Farm Center is up there too.
Sure.
That place gets loud. So I don't know. I mean,
we'll see. A big game. Like if it's a big, like next week, I know Michigan State's struggling a little bit, but that's going to feel big. I know it's still kind of a break game, but when Iowa comes to town, when Purdue comes to town, like Illinois fans definitely make that one of the better venues.
Dude, when they had those comebacks against Michigan and Northwestern last year.
Oh yeah.
And that you could see it was just mounting and mounting and mounting. And then they kept building to this crescendo of tying or taking the lead. It was just pandemonium. It was crazy. So that's what's great about this league is, game in and game out, there's just really great venues and arenas and fans in general. Like I think Nebraska's done a really good job over the past few years. That was one where when I came in my freshman year, they had a totally different arena. And then my sophomore year they had an all new one. And that is probably my favorite arena just from like aesthetically. I mean, it is a beautiful arena. They did a really good job.
That whole campus of, Memorial Stadium football for them. And then that Pinnacle Bank, like it's just gorgeous. Like the Haymarket District, awesome place to visit. If you're a fan.
They did a really good job with that one. And their fans are right behind you. And those are the best ones when those fans are right on top of you. And that Mackey is no exception because they're hanging right over you.
Yeah.
By the bench.
I don't know if Wisconsin's like, it's kind of like a mini United Center to me. Like the aesthetic might not be as great. Like I love Williams Arena in Minnesota. I just love that feel of it. But like that's not an easy place to play when you were playing, Mike, because those teams are pretty loaded.
Yeah, well, they're really good teams, and then those arenas are just their strength is their uniqueness. Wisconsin, it's the coldest arena I've ever played in. I mean, it is, dude. Like especially if it's like we had so many noon tip-offs there. I think 2 or 3 in my career there. And you go there and you're like, gosh, like you can't do a shoot around in the morning because it's a noon tip off, and you got to get there early and warm up because you feel like your hands are frozen, your feet are frozen. They're used to it. They practice in there, but
you get the ice underneath there, right? Just like United Center.
Yeah, just like the United Center. So, and then Williams Arena as well. I mean, the barn is super weird. You're elevated. You're hope to God you don't dive for a loose ball on the baseline. Man, it's I could talk about the arenas for days, man.
How about Northwestern? I love going there.
They've done a good job. Again, really good job.
Yeah.
That place, when I was there early on, I think it was pretty much the same throughout the course of my career there. They had like gray seats. It was just, it just wasn't a great arena. And now they've kind of revamped it. They got a new scoreboard, Jumbotron. The seats look different. And it helps too that you're winning games.
Yeah.
Now I think where Northwestern can take that next step as a fan base is, man, I watched what that crowd looked like when Purdue came to town, and I watched what that crowd looked like when Chicago State came to town. I mean, there was no one in the gym.
Mm-hmm.
And at least for Illinois and for some of these other schools, when you have a good team, it's not just about the good matchups. You want to go and watch the good team. It doesn't matter who the good team is playing. I mean, FDU, I was there the other night and we were talking about it on the broadcast.
So
I'm looking around. I mean, your All-American is out. You're playing FDU, and that thing was almost full, man. So it's you can see, man, it's different in different parts for sure.
Yeah, like I'd prefer a Northwestern Minnesota venue, something unique compared to like Michigan and Ohio State, kind of just NBA style arenas.
Ohio State's too big.
Yeah,
and I think every time you go in there, it is so definitely NBA style because at the baselines it flows out and not up.
Yep.
So, and I don't think they have a great atmosphere. I mean, I was watching the Rutgers game last night, and there were people on Twitter like, God, is a church service in the shot? So they have to get that figured out for sure. Michigan, very like pristine arena, clean. Even the visiting locker room is the best visiting locker room, I think, in the Big Ten. I mean, they have, when you go into arena and if it's your home locker room, you have like the office chairs and stuff. They have office chairs for the opposing team. They have wooden, like tall lockers. Like when you walk into their shower area, it's all glass. Beautiful. I mean, it's crazy for an opposing locker room. You go to Minnesota, I mean, you are in a
1920s bathroom.
It's about 3 feet wide and goes about 10 feet deep. And there's one little whiteboard and you're just in there. It's nuts. Iowa's super small too. But yeah, some of these teams could benefit. I think Ohio State could benefit from playing in a smaller arena. They've done it a few times. They've gone and played at the old one.
Yeah.
And
you said some of these are cold. The rack I hear is hot, humid.
Dude, the rack smells like bus fumes.
Jersey, man.
The one game that I had at the rack, because Rutgers came into the conference my junior year, and we didn't play them there until my senior year. And it was a triple overtime game. And I was redshirting, so I was in like dress clothes. And it was felt like it was 98 degrees. Shout out Nick Lachey. 98 degrees in that arena. And I don't know what was going on, if they parked buses right outside or something. It was just like fumes. Like you just smelled fumes. And like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, I want us to win, but can this game end? I mean, this is crazy. I mean, we got to the third overtime. It was like 126 to 118. And there's all these, it's just, it's a wild place to play, but it gets loud as well.
Yeah. Well, Mike, I think we covered it all there. That was a fun conversation about the venues there. But if people want more, Mike LaTulip will have the film room up shortly. Mike, thanks as always. We'll catch up next week as we learn more about this team with Purdue this weekend. And then, of course, Michigan State and Maryland next week. Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you.